I just couldn't believe what I saw. Joni, to whom I had been married for 7 years, was sitting on a table in the dining car with her friend Jim, with whom they were making love. I looked around, thinking there must be a clerk or waiter somewhere, but strangely enough, he wasn't there. At that moment, all the love I had for my wife died. It was supposed to be a fun excursion for the two of us to reconnect. I was surprised when she told me that Jim, her work friend, would be there. She insisted that he was a friend to both of us. But truth be told, I didn't care for the guy, and at the time I couldn't think of any reason why he would want to come with us. But now I knew. I also knew that I would need proof for my divorce. Oh yeah, it was over between us. Sure, the sight of them sleeping on the table made me a little flustered, but there was no way I was going to put up with this total disrespect. I pulled out my cell phone and started videotaping their date. I had no desire to watch or hear what they had to say. It seemed like they had been having fun on that table for ages, and I couldn't believe how rude Jim was being to her. She even seemed to enjoy it. Maybe I should have been rough with her, but it just wasn't my style. Finally, they stopped and Joni adjusted her dress, handing Jim her panties. The sexy new panties I thought she'd bought for me. He smiled and brought them up to his face, inhaling her scent. "We have to be careful," she said as they took their seats. "If George finds out about us, he won't be happy at all." "Screw that weakling," Jim said with a chuckle. "We did this all last year and he never found out." What? I thought to myself. This shit has been going on for a year? I knew Joni and I had a bit of a strained relationship because of my busy work schedule, but damn, it was what kept a roof over our heads. Sure, Joni worked too, but her paycheck, whatever it was, went to pay for the things she wanted. Clothes, accessories, trips to the beauty parlor, and so on. That was the whole idea of taking a few days off to do some railroading, sightseeing, and spending time in each other's arms. "Did you do as I said about the birth control?" he asked. Joni nodded her head. "Yes," she said. "I stopped taking it so you could knock me up. I told George that I'm on my period this week so he doesn't expect any sex." They both laughed heartily at that. "So why are you staying with him?" Jim asked. "You obviously don't love him or you wouldn't be doing this to him." "Well, it's not that I don't love him," she said. "I like him well enough, but I just don't have that burning love for him anymore. Besides, he brings in a good salary, and you know I couldn't live on what I earn." "You're staying with him for the money," he said. She nodded her head. "To a large extent," she said. "Hell, I could never afford the comfort he got on that trip, and neither could you." "When do you want to get back together?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe later this evening after he goes to bed," she said. I had seen and heard enough and finished recording the video. I went back to the sleeping car where Joni and I were staying and considered my options. Divorce was a given, but there had to be more to it than that. Both her and her boyfriend needed to pay their bills. I pulled out my phone again and went to the contacts section looking for my attorney's number. "Fred Juergens," a man said, answering the phone. "Fred, it's George. I need you to start preparing divorce papers for me, and I want you to use a prenuptial agreement," I said. "Divorce?" Fred asked in surprise. "Are you sure about that?" "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," I said. "On what grounds?" Fred asked. "Treason," I said. "I have a video I can send you if you need proof." "Yes, do that," said Fred. "I have a prenup here, so it won't take too long to process. When do you want her papers served?" "The sooner the better," I said. "We'll be back in Springfield in a couple days, so maybe you can have her served at the train station. I also need to find out everything I can about her boyfriend, Jim Simpson. He works with her." "I'll have our investigator look into it," Fred said. "Send me the video and I'll take a look at it. Don't do anything stupid, okay?" "Yeah, sure," I said. "You know me." "Yeah, I know," Fred said. "That's why I said don't do anything stupid." Fred always made me laugh. We finished talking and I sent Fred the video. Then I leaned back in my seat and thought for a minute about what else I could do. I pulled out my tablet and connected my phone to it. After transferring the video to the tablet, I turned on my phone's hotspot and used it to connect my tablet to our home network via VPN, or virtual private network. I set this up a while ago so that I could securely access my files from anywhere in the world. The first thing I did was log into our banking system and do the typical dance. close joint cards, transfer funds, etc. I didn't want to take any chances, even given the prenup. I had another evil thought. Joni liked to use the home computer for her personal email. Fortunately, she wasn't too savvy about things like security, so I was able to log into her email account with a couple clicks of the mouse. I copied the video first to my tablet, then to my home computer. Opening her email client, I wrote an email trying to sound like her. I used a corny subject line that sounded like her, "Check out my fun train ride." In the body, I wrote, "Watch what I do while my clueless hubby sleeps." I then attached the video to an email and sent it to everyone on her contact list. That's right. Friends, family, her coworkers at work, everyone you can think of. I watched it for a minute, then hit send. Fuck this, I thought to myself. I opened the door to our compartment just in time to see one of the conductors. I gestured for him to come over when he looked up at me. "Is everything all right, sir?" he asked. "Well, my wife says she wants to move to another compartment," I said. "Could you tell me which compartment Jim Simpson is in?" The conductor checked his clipboard for a moment before answering. "Do you want your wife's things moved to this compartment?" he asked. "Are you sure? It's in economy class and it's nowhere near as nice as it is here." "That's life," I said. He nodded his head understandingly. "I see," he said. "Of course, I'll help you pack her things." We worked quickly, not really caring how well her clothes were packed. Once we were done, I helped the conductor carry her things to his compartment, which was half the size of ours. I laughed as I tossed her things onto his small bunk bed. Let her deal with it herself, I thought to myself. "I'll need to make her a new key card," the conductor said. He pulled a white card from his pocket and inserted it into the magnetic recording device connected to his tablet. Finished. He looked at me. "Do you know where she is?" he asked. I nodded my head. "I know where she was the last time I saw her," I said. "Lead the way," he said. We walked across the train and into the dining car. Joni and Jim were still making eyes at each other when we approached them. I sat down in one of the chairs at a table and the clerk caught Joni's eye. "Yes?" she asked, looking worried. "I need to give you your new key card," he said. "And take the old one?" She looked surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Apparently there's been a mix-up in the seat assignment, so I need to give you your new key card," he said. This guy was cool as a cucumber, I thought. Annoyed, Joni pulled out her key card and held it out to the desk clerk. He smiled and handed her a new card. "Thank you," he said. "Have a nice trip." He turned and walked away. Joni looked at me angrily. "What the fuck are you doing?" she asked. "I'm just easing you and Jim into the game," I said. Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You think I don't know about you two?" I asked. Joni was starting to get nervous. She looked at Jim, and he looked worried. He looked at her key card and noticed the compartment number. "Wait a minute," he said. "That's my compartment key." I nodded my head. "I thought that way you two wouldn't have to entertain yourselves on the dinner table," I said. "I realize it can be a little cramped in here, but that's the way it is. By the way, did Joni ever tell you about the prenup she signed when we got married?" "What are you talking about?" Jim asked. "Well, if you're going to sleep with someone, you should know a little about her first. Wouldn't you agree?" I asked. "Look, it was all just for fun," he said. "We didn't mean anything by it." Joni spoke up. "That's right, George," she said. "It was all just for fun. It won't affect our marriage in the slightest." "Really?" I asked, pulling out my tablet. I scrolled down to the part where they were talking and clicked the play icon. "Listen to this," I said. "I like him well enough, but I just don't have that burning love for him anymore. Besides, he brings in a good salary, and you know I couldn't live on what I make," Joni's voice said in the video. "So, you're staying with him because of the money," Jim said in the video. She nodded her head. I stopped the video and looked at her. "So, bitch," I said, "I'm just a walking paycheck to you." "Honey," she started. I stopped her. You can never call me honey, darling, sweetie, or whatever, I said. I don't think you should even call me by my first name. I think you should call me Mr. Duvalier. And since you don't consider yourself my wife, I'll take this, I added, taking off her wedding ring. And I'll take this, I added, grabbing her purse and taking her house key out of the large key ring she kept there. I took off my wedding ring and put it in front of Jim. You can have this. I don't need it anymore. I turned to Jim. The prenup she signed, Jim, says that in the event of infidelity, the guilty party, in this case Joni, gets absolutely nothing. I'll leave her clothes and jewelry, but that's it. I don't think she'll be able to keep up her car payments. Luckily, I've got the paperwork in her name, so it'll be a blow to her credit rating. You fucking bastard, he said, starting to get up. I grabbed a fork and tried to stab him in the arm. He sat up again. Don't fuck with me, asshole, I said. Please, Joni said, and tears came to her eyes. Mr. Duvalier, please don't do this. I've learned my lesson. Can't you forgive me and we can put this behind us? No, bitch, I said, rewinding the video to the point where they started talking about knocking Joni up. I scrolled through the video so they could both hear clearly. You two have been doing this shit to me for a year now, and you conspired to get knocked up by Jim and pass the baby off as mine, I hissed, glaring at Joni. Right now, I hate the hell out of you, and I pray to God I never see you again. I looked at Jim before I spoke again. You wanted a lying, cheating bitch, asshole? You got it, I said. Good luck with that. I don't think she'll get much support from her family and friends. What do you mean? Joni asked. I shrugged. Check your email, I said. She pulled out her phone and opened the mobile email app. Her eyes widened. What did you do? She asked. I just shared your experience with your family and friends, I said. You looked like you were having such a great time. I just knew you'd love to share it with others. You're a bastard, she hissed. My parents just disowned me, and my sister says she never wants to see me again. My friends think I'm a worthless whore, and now they all hate me. Can you blame them? I asked calmly. I gave you the 7 best years of my life. All that time I loved only you and never even thought about another woman. Worked my ass off for you. Bought you that big house you just had to have. Bought you that new BMW. I never once complained when you spent all your money on yourself, and I never complained when you went off to supposedly go out with the girls. And what did I get in return? You rip my heart out, you cheat on me and ruin our marriage, so I don't blame them one bit. Please just give me another chance, she pleaded. I shook my head. No, I said. You could have ended it at any time, but you chose not to. So this is the end of the road. You've chosen your bed, and now you're going to sleep in it. I hope it was all worth it for you. I think you'll be handed your papers when we get to Springfield. Just sign the papers and be done with it. Then you and Jim can have each other to death. I don't care. Mr. Duvalier, she said, is there anything I can do to make it up to you? I'll do anything. I stood up and thought for a moment before answering. Yes, I said. There is one thing. 2 things, actually. Her eyes lit up in anticipation. Eat shit and die. She fainted in tears as I turned and walked away. I could barely hold back the tears as I walked back to my compartment. After I closed and locked the door, my phone rang. It was her parents. Apparently, they had seen the video I had sent them. George, what the hell is going on? Cliff, Joni's father, asked. Hi, Cliff, I said. I caught your daughter having sex with another man. I took a video and sent it to you. I'm filing divorce papers based on the prenup. I think she'll be served when the train arrives in Springfield. I wanted you to know why I'm divorcing her. Is there any way to ignore it? He asked. I mean, divorce is so drastic. No, Cliff, I said. If you listen to what your daughter and her lover have said, you'll realize that there's no way I can accept her cheating. I'm just a paycheck to her, that's all. She even wanted me to raise a child with another man. That stupid girl, he said. I heard you disowned her, I said. No, he said. I asked her to give me one good reason not to disown her. I'm still waiting. Well, anyway, I'm glad you got us to sign that prenup, I said. Things probably didn't work out the way you imagined, but you did me a big favor. I'm sorry, George, he said. You're right, and since then I've come to love you like the son I never had. I think highly of you too, I said. Is there anything we can do? He asked. Actually, yes, I said. Do you still have that spare key to the house I gave you? Yes, we have it, he said. Could you call a truck and get her stuff out of the house? I asked. I'll be out of town for a couple more days, and I don't want her in the house. I'll reimburse you for the cost of the truck. Sure, we can do that, he said. What about her car? You can take it too, but I'm not sure how long she'll be able to use it, I said. Maybe you can teach her how to budget, or maybe she can trade it in for something she can afford. Okay, he said. Look, George, I'm really sorry about all this. It's not your fault, I said. We said goodbye and ended the conversation. The phone rang the second I put it in my pocket. It was Joni's cousin, Lisa. I answered the phone. What do you want, Lisa? I asked. So, did you finally find out about Joni? She asked. Yes, I said. I take it you're going to divorce that worthless bitch? She asked. Of course, I said. I've already taken some steps. Good, she said. You know I've always had a soft spot for you. Truth be told, I found Lisa pretty damn attractive too, but I was married to her cousin, so that made her unavailable. Well, you're pretty sexy yourself, I said. Lisa had a habit of wearing short skirts and tiny ripped shorts around me, and it always made me feel good. So you noticed, she said. Of course I did, I told her. Now that you kicked that bitch out, do you think we can sleep together? She asked. Maybe when the divorce is final, I said. Okay, I understand, she said. I've waited 7 years for you, so I think I can wait a few more months. I'll see you when you get back. Something good might come out of all this after all. The next 2 days flew by pretty quickly for me. I spent most of my time talking on the phone. I rarely left my compartment to avoid coming face to face with these two traitors. I heard from Fred, who told me what I suspected. Jim Simpson was a notorious womanizer who had been divorced twice for adultery. His last wife had also filed domestic violence charges against him. I assumed Joni would be attracted to someone like that, but I hoped she would wake up in time and leave him. Shortly before the train arrived in Springfield, Joni knocked on my door. Who is it? I asked through the closed door. It's me, Joni, she said. What do you want? I asked. I want my husband back, she screamed. Tough shit, bitch, I said. I want a faithful wife who loves me, but I didn't get that, did I? Please, Jay. Mr. Duvalier, I made a mistake, she exclaimed. You went way beyond a mistake, I said. Get out of here before I call security. You should be in economy class. Please, she pleaded. Can't we just talk? No, I said. Go away. I never want to see you again. I heard her sniffle as she walked away. Some part of me sympathized with her, but I didn't really care. She had brought this all on herself with her lies, her cheating, and her disrespect. I got off the train and looked around to see if I could see her and Jim. I saw them getting off the train a few cars away. Neither of them looked too happy. Cool shit, I thought to myself. While I watched, a man walked up to Joni and handed her a heavy paper envelope. She opened it and immediately burst into tears. I smiled and walked away. I got into my car and drove home. I noticed that Joni's car was gone and all of her things were out, including a few pieces of furniture that she had when we first got married. I put my things away and went through the house, taking down all the pictures that showed her. I wanted nothing to remind me of this cheating wench. A couple hours later, I heard a knock on the door. I looked out the window and saw Lisa. God, she looked hot in those shorts. I opened the door and let her inside. She was carrying a big platter of something that smelled like lasagna. She walked in like she was the mistress of this house and set the dish on the kitchen table. When she turned to me again, I looked her over from head to toe. She was wearing a short t-shirt that reached just below her breasts. Her shorts were shorter than I remembered. I wanted to make sure you had something good to eat, she said. I don't want you to go hungry. Thank you, Lisa, I said. I appreciate it. Her eyes sparkled as she smiled. Would you like to stay and have dinner with me? I'd love to, she said. Go wash up and I'll know where everything is. I headed upstairs and quickly washed my face before heading back down. By the time I got back, the table was already set, and Lisa had even poured each of us a glass of wine. I pulled a chair over for her and admired her slender hips as she sat down. She grabbed my plate and put a nice piece of lasagna on it, which had lots of meat and layers of cheese. I figured it took a lot of work on her part. After she placed a small portion for herself, I looked at her. It looks delicious, I said. Thank you, she said in response. I love to cook, especially for the people I really care about. Indeed, the lasagna was as delicious as it looked, and I ate every bite, even wiping my plate with a piece of garlic bread she'd baked. You must be hungry, she said. There's no way I'm wasting such a delicious meal, I said. It was the best lasagna I'd ever tasted. She smiled, coming close to me. I'm glad you liked it, she said, sitting down on my lap. There's a lot more where that came from, and maybe someday I'll even bring you dessert, she added, scooping up her t-shirt to show off her beautiful size 2 breasts. I need to get home and feed my cat, but I'll be home tomorrow. I can't wait, I said. She smiled, standing up. This is just a preview of what I have in store for you, she said. We kissed for a bit before Lisa left. Fortunately, Joni didn't fight the divorce. Apparently, she realized that I had put her on the spot and decided to end the marriage. She and Jim managed to keep their jobs, but from what I heard, they had a hard time doing so. She signed the papers and called me to apologize and tell me it was done. Fred called to let me know that the signed papers had been filed, and in 30 days, I would be a free man. Was I happy? I was happy to be rid of my cheating wife, but some part of me felt something was missing. I had loved only this woman for many years and hoped to retire with her surrounded by children and grandchildren. But that was not destined to happen. I was also frustrated that I had never gotten my revenge on Jim. I thought about filing a petition for alienation of affection, but Fred said that was a waste of time. I thought about beating him to a pulp, but changed my mind as I had no desire to go to jail. Lisa came over every night with something she had made, and we shared dinner. She even made a mark on my calendar, counting down the days until the divorce would be final. She was a tireless tease. Pretty soon the 30 days were up, and I received the papers stating that the divorce had been finalized. I was surprised I hadn't heard anything from Joni, as I figured she should have called or done something stupid by now, but she hadn't. Oh well. Lisa didn't wait for me to call. She came over that afternoon and knocked on the door. I thought this was strange, since I had already given her a key to the house and told her she could come over any time. I opened the door and got the biggest shock of my life. There she was on the front porch. She was standing completely naked. I took her inside and kissed her hard, running my hands over her smooth skin. She kissed me back just as hard, all the while pulling my clothes off. We ended up naked on the couch, and before I knew it, we were hooking up. This is so much better than I ever thought it would be, she moaned. I love you too, I said. We slept together a few more times on the couch and finally went to the bedroom where we made love most of the night. I never wanted to part with this woman. As we held each other, I realized that I had to be with this woman for the rest of my life. She must have thought the same thing. She turned on her side and looked into my eyes. I have always loved you, George, she said. I will never do to you what my stupid cousin did. I want to spend the rest of my life right here with you. Does that mean you'll marry me? I asked. She smiled and hugged me. Yes, baby, she said. I will marry you and make you the happiest man on earth. We kissed and made love some more before falling asleep in each other's arms. A few days later, I got a call from Joni's father. Lisa and I had just finished making love and were leaning back on the headboard watching a movie, sharing a bowl of popcorn. George, Joni's in the hospital, he said. I sat up, surprised. What happened? I asked. That asshole she was with beat her to a pulp, he said. I told her to call the police, but she refused. Is she going to be okay? I asked. Eventually, but I don't think it will be for long if she stays with him, he said. Okay, we'll go there and check on her, I said. Oui? her father asked. Yes, me and Lisa, I said. Is Lisa there with you? He asked. Yes, I said. I couldn't have done it without her. Good, he said. I understand. I'll meet you at the hospital. After we finished talking, I explained to Lisa what had happened and told her what I had learned about Jim Grebbin Simpson. We were both angry at Joni for what she had done, but neither of us wanted to physically hurt her. We cleaned ourselves up, got dressed, and headed to the hospital. After talking to the nurse, we were ushered into her room. She looked terrible. Her face was black and blue, and one eye was swollen shut and wouldn't open. One arm was in a cast, and fluid was dripping from an IV in the other. She moaned weakly as we entered the room. I wanted to hug her and tell her everything was going to be okay, but I didn't. Jay, Mr. Duvalier, she said, a tear rolling down her cheek. I held up my hand to stop her. You can call me George, I said. What's wrong? Jim wanted to use my car to take his date on a date, and I told him no, she said slowly. He got angry and started hitting me, calling me all kinds of names. I told him that it was my car and almost half of my check was going to pay for it, and there was no way I was going to let him use it to impress some whore. He wouldn't stop beating me until I threatened to call 911. That's when he took off. I don't know where he is. I was having a really hard time breathing and my chest was hurting really bad, so I called 911 and they came and brought me here. Did you tell the cops what happened? Lisa asked. No, she said. I was afraid to do that. I thought if they put him in jail, he'd kill me when he got out. I shook my head at the crap I'd heard. Let me handle this the right way, I said. You ran off to live with the guy you cheated on me with, and now he's cheating on you. Is that true? She sobbed and nodded her head. Yeah, she said. I really screwed up, didn't I? Yes, you did, Lisa said. But you don't deserve this. He committed a crime and he should be put behind bars. Joni, I said. Did you know he had a history of domestic violence? I knew he could be a little rough, but no, I didn't know that, she said. Lisa hugged her cousin and tried to comfort her. Joni noticed the diamond ring on her finger. Are you engaged? Joni asked. Lisa smiled and nodded her head. Yes, she said. George and I are going to get married. Joni began to sob, and her tears soaked Lisa's t-shirt. But you're still my cousin, and I still love you, even though I think you're a stupid bitch for what you did to George. Just then, Joni's parents walked into the room. They were furious when Lisa and I told them what had happened. Okay, Cliff said to Joni. We'll stay here with you and move you back to the house when you're discharged. You'll stay with us until you can get back on your feet. He looked at me and gestured for me to step out into the hallway. What do you know about this Simpson guy? He asked. I told him what I'd learned from Fred, and he nodded his head, making mental notes. And you say he's working with Joni? Yes, I said. He nodded his head once more. Okay, I'll take care of Simpson, he said. I'm not going to discuss it with you. You don't need to know the details, believe me. What's going on with you and Lisa? Well, she helped me through my divorce, and now we're engaged, I said. He smiled and nodded his head. I'm not surprised, he said. She's always had a thing for you. Congratulations. At least you'll still be part of the family. Thank you, I said. Is there anything I can do to help with Simpson? He shook his head. No, he said. I'll take care of everything. Besides, you're getting married soon, and the last thing Lisa needs is her new husband in jail. The less you know, the better. Cliff was walking down the hallway talking to someone on his cell phone. I headed back to Joni's room. Joni's mother looked at us. I'll stay with her tonight, she said. Cliff will take care of getting her things out of that man's apartment. Thanks for coming by. You're welcome, I said as I hugged her. Joni looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she said, for everything. Will you be able to forgive me? I thought for a moment before I spoke. I think so, I said, realizing that the other two women were looking at me. After all, we'll still be a family. Thank you, she said. I walked over and hugged her goodbye. Get well, I said, kissing her lightly on the forehead. Take good care of him, Joni said to Lisa. Please. Lisa smiled and nodded her head. "I'm going to do it," she said. We walked out of the hospital and headed home. I had no idea what Cliff meant about Jim, but I had heard stories about his military service. I also knew he had friends in high and low circles, so I kept up with the local news, even looking at the obituaries. I didn't see anything there, but a week later there was a short story in the local paper about a man being attacked and brutally beaten outside a local bar. According to the story, the man named Jim Simpson was confronted by a group of men who ended up breaking 3 ribs, his jaw, his kneecap, and his arm. The story also said something about his testicles being severely damaged. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Cliff took Joni's things from the apartment and moved her back to her house. Her parents hated what she had done to me, but she was still their daughter, and they still loved her. Lisa and I got married a couple months later. Since her parents had died a few years earlier in a car accident, Cliff walked her down the aisle and shook my hand. Joni came with her parents and cried when the preacher pronounced us husband and wife. We had a great honeymoon in Las Vegas. Upon returning, we moved her things into the house. She decided that since I was making more than enough for the 2 of us, she would quit her job. "I have a new job now," she told me. "What is it?" I asked. "Making you happy," she said with a sly smile. And she did. And then one day, a few months later, she came at me with the words every husband fears. "We need to talk," she said after I came home from work. "Is something wrong?" I asked, dreading her answer. "Well," she said, "we're going to have to remodel one of the bedrooms." "Why?" I asked. She smiled. "Because," she said, "you're going to be a daddy." I jumped for joy and took her in my arms, kissing her face. "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm the happiest person in the world," I said. "Then take me upstairs and show me how happy you are, big guy," she said. I did. Over and over again. Yes, I thought, sometimes life gives you lemons, and sometimes you get something much better in return.